This is a ManeHustle Media podcast.
All the way from the A, you listen to My Favorite Lesbian on BRQ.
Hey, stay locked in with your favorite lesbian on Black Radical Queer. Yeah.
Hey y'all, this is Jhavia Nicole, aka your favorite lesbian, and you're listening to Black Radical Queer Podcast, our stories on our own terms. Hey y'all, this is Jhavia Nicole. Welcome back to Black Radical Queer Podcast. First of all, I hope that you all are doing well. If you're not, then I hope that changes soon, and I hope that you get whatever it is that you need to be well. So whether that's self-care, community care, rest, whatever that looks like, hope that you receive that. I'm putting that out into the universe for all of you. So today, what I wanted to do for this episode is actually a social media roundup. Now, those of you who've been listening for a while already know that I do this periodically. It has been a while since I've done a social media roundup. So as I've been kind of scrolling through Facebook and Twitter and everything, I'm just like, things have been popping up that have caught my eye, and I'm like, let me just make note of this so I can circle back to this on the podcast, because folks is wild out here. So just a couple days ago, we celebrated MLK Day, and so I was seeing different posts that are related to MLK. I watched The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, and there was a segment on there called MLK Day Fails. So I'm like, okay, it was like recommended on YouTube. Or trending on YouTube. Yeah, it was trending on YouTube. So I decided to watch it. And in this segment, there were a few things that were pointed out. So apparently there's this store, and they decided to have an MLK Day sale, but their sale was 25% off everything Black. So that was their MLK Day promotion. All right. So Hot Mess Express can't make this stuff up. I'm just like, are y'all kidding me? The next thing in the segment, and I'm going to include a link so that you can actually watch the full thing, because I just wanted to touch on this very briefly. But the second thing was there was this club flyer promoting a party. I'm assuming a MLK Day party. And y'all, they had a picture of Martin Luther the King Jr. Photoshopped with gold chains and a more, present day haircut, and it was just crazy. I was like, are y'all serious? So they didn't Photoshop your boy to look like he about to go to the club, and they got him on a flyer for an event, some twerk event or something. So that's a hot mess as well. And then one of the other things they mentioned on the segment was this guy who was saying, he's a proponent of basically right to bear arms or just gun. He's very pro gun. And so he's like, I believe that if King were alive today, he would agree with me and all this type of stuff. And, if we had if everybody basically had guns back in the day, then we probably would not have even had slavery, or basically that would have changed the course of history. And I'm just like, my guy. What? Well, absolutely. If slaves had guns, yeah, that would have been a totally different situation, but it probably would not have worked out the way you wanted it to, buddy. So anyway, just a hot mess. I'm going to include a link so that you can watch the episode or whatever, but y'all, it's a hot mess. Okay. A hot mess express. So, anyway, I wanted to briefly mention that, because you have to actually go watch the episode, because it's very ridiculous. But yeah. All right. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was this post. Y'all, lots of hot messes all over social media. But anyway, there's this post. I won't say the person's name because I don't know her, and so I just won't do that. However, this post is interesting. I'm going to just read the post to you, because I don't know if, with the way settings are, if I include the link, I don't know if everybody will be able to see it, or if you have to be a friend or something like that whatever. So I'm gonna read this post to y'all, and I'm gonna tell y'all how this is a hot mess. So in this post, this person said, so they posted a picture of the character Lottie from Princess and the Frog. Lottie was basically like BFFs with Tiana. Now, I will give the disclaimer that personally, I have not watched the entire Princess and the Frog because it pisses me off that she was a frog for 99.99% of the movie. So I hadn't been able to actually get through the whole thing because it just honestly pisses me off. So yeah, that's my little disclaimer or whatever. But regardless, I still think that whether you've seen the movie in its entirety or at all or whatever, there's still a broader point that I'm going to circle back to that you'll get regardless. All right. So the post. Can we talk about this character for a second? Lottie was Tiana's best friend, and growing up together, she was the one that always got what she wanted. She was spoiled, but she was always there for her friend. Even grown, she always looked out for Tiana from cleaning her up at the party while dancing with who she thought was the prince to kissing a frog so Tiana can have her happily ever after. She didn't resent Tiana for stealing her crown, but instead she was at their wedding with tears in her eyes, smiling happily as her best friend was walking out with the man she loves. Charlotte, that's Lottie. Charlotte is one of the best characters in Disney history, and I believe if there were to ever be a sequel to The Princess and the Frog, she should get her happily ever after. I think she would be a wonderful addition to the Disney princesses and would be a wonderful role model for little girls who grow up getting everything, but teaching them that true love and friendship is so much better than any materialistic possessions. Truly an amazing woman and an ideal character. All right. So that is the post. And let me tell you how this fucked up. So basically, the situation is you have a white person with privilege and money who is just being a decent person to this black girl. And so she deserves a spinoff and praise and admiration and to be a Disney princess because of that. So it really goes back to this thing of folks are always looking for ways to absolve white people. Okay. If a white person does one decent thing, because it doesn't even have to be like particularly nice per se, it's just decent. Like if you're just not a terrible person, then you deserve kudos and pats on the back and cookies and gold stars. And that's so ridiculous because that's not the case for anybody else. But for white people, oh, this white person said a nice thing to a black person, they must be a saint. Like, it's so ridiculous. It is so ridiculous. And this is a prime example of that. Because this character was decent to her black friend, she deserves all this stuff. Like, she was already privileged. She was already rich. So you're trying to basically hype her up, or play her up or whatever, as if she was so amazing. So this is my thing. I think people don't realize consciously that when you assert stuff like this, it's still dehumanizing to black folks. Okay. It's dehumanizing because you're basically saying, look, this white person treated her like a human being. They deserve praise and all this other stuff because apparently it's some feat. It's some magical, wonderful thing that you actually treated a black person like a human, like with some decency. So that just goes to show that this dehumanization of black folks is very much ingrained because underneath that is this idea that, black folks shouldn't be treated well. So you must be going out of your way to treat a black person well. Like you deserve recognition because you're treating a black person well. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And it should be recognized how ridiculous that idea is. The other thing is too, black folks and people of color are often looking for reasons to praise white folks, quote unquote, invite them to the cookout. And it really does go back to absolving them. I mean, a white person do one nice thing, or they can dance a little bit, or they cook something. It's like, you're invited to the cookout. Oh, this person's great. Like, we are so readily welcome in our oppressors. And it's really crazy to me. And it's almost like a Stockholm syndrome type of situation, honestly, because, you've been so oppressed and so inundated with negativity and all this type of stuff from white people that you get shown a little bit of kindness and you cling to it, or a little bit of decency. I won't even say kindness. You just get the hint, a whiff, a sprinkle, a pinch of decency. And it's like, oh Lord, this person is amazing. But that is like the classic structure of an abusive relationship. Somebody is treating, let's say a partner treats their partner crappy. They treat them terribly, so that when they do something nice for them and they do treat them nice, that other partner clings on to that and that gets magnified. Or even in just, not necessarily an abusive relationship, domestic violence situation or whatever. Let's just say in any relationship, when you're going through that honeymoon phase, or, our brain is on drugs. Okay. We are high off of infatuation. And so when we're in that state, everything that's great about a person is just amazing. And anything that could potentially be a red flag or anything that is, not great, it's minimized, it's diminished, but anything that we see as great, it is the most spectacular thing ever. And so we cling to that. And so it's the same situation, how this relationship that Black people have with white people, they do one thing and it's like, invite them to the cookout and we can hang out and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, and that's why I have a lot of problems with this, with the idea of allyship and all that, but that's a whole other thing. And I've mentioned that to y'all before, but, it really irritates me to see white people can do the absolute least and get the most. They can do the absolute least. So just a dash of effort and it's like they can get, the recognition as if they've been a civil rights hero or something. And it all boils down to, them just doing something that is common decency or that's just common courtesy and being so unaccustomed to that because white supremacy is rampant in our society that is clung to. It's just like, oh my gosh, this white person did a nice thing or didn't treat me like crap, because it's not like, oh, they just treated me fantastically. It's like, oh, they didn't treat me badly. This is a novel concept. Like, I can't believe they didn't treat me badly. So they must be a great person. It's just a problem, right? So there's that. And the other side of that too is just even in general with friendship, when you have a friendship, like you do invest in your friendship. A friendship is a type of relationship, of course. And when you care about people, when you're building relationships, you invest in it, whether it's mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and or financially, there's an investment that takes place. And so Charlotte, just being a friend to Tiana, is not some major accomplishment to be celebrated unless you see Tiana as undeserving of friends. And if she's undeserving of friends, why is she undeserving? So that's what I mean by things being ingrained. If Charlotte deserves all these props and kudos, then it must mean that this is a feat. She accomplished something by being friends with this little Black girl. And that's a problem. So yeah, that definitely has to be unpacked. But anyway, back to the friendship thing. Yeah. So, it's not like Charlotte isn't special for investing in her friendship, like for just being a good friend. You see your friend needs help. She saw her friend needed help. She helped her friend. The end. She doesn't have to be thrown a party and a parade for that. Like, that's just that's what friends do. Like, that's the whole point of you having a friendship, that you don't just walk away like this somebody, a stranger on the street. Like, you show compassion and empathy to your friends. So that's not some unique thing that Charlotte should be praised for. Okay. Investing in your friendships is normal. And speaking of investing, you should also invest in your personal growth and development. Okay. And one of the ways that you can invest in that is with Spectra Wellness. Spectra Wellness offers coaching and retreat space for activists trying to manage work, life, and activism. For anyone who's worked in the nonprofit industry, you know how it is to combat imposter syndrome, feeling overworked, undercompensated, and burnt out. The founder of Spectra is my friend Bianca. Bianca Campbell is a Black queer project manager. Years ago, Bianca and I coached pregnant people at a clinic together. I saw how they advocated for the entire team at staff meetings and how they supported coworkers to help them feel empowered and to feel like leaders. So now they are combining their tenderness with their accountability. So they're showing others how to create the boundaries that they need at work, life, and activism so you can move from a full cup. I'm excited to see them share those gifts out with the world. You can follow them on Instagram. So the IG is at Spectra Wellness. Spectra is spelled SPEKTRA. So that's at Spectra Wellness all together. The first three BRQ listeners who follow Spectra Wellness and also DM Bianca with the hashtag Black Rad Queer, BLK RAD QWR, will get their first coaching session for 50% off. Again, the first three people who follow Bianca at Spectra Wellness on Instagram will And you have to DM Bianca with the code #BlackRadQueer, BLK RAD QWR. You'll receive your first coaching session 50% off. If you work at a nonprofit, especially a larger nonprofit, coaching should be a part of your professional development budget. They need to invest. What I was just talking about, invest. So these folks should be investing in your professional development. Okay. You deserve to feel supported at work. If we're fighting for justice, then these organizations should be accountable to starting that work internally. Hey, charity starts at home. So we're trying to take care of the world, but we need to be taken care of too, because you absolutely cannot pour from an empty cup. Okay. So get some balance, get some affirmation, and get some coaching from Spectra Wellness. All right. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which kind of relevant to wellness. I mean, it is relevant to wellness because it really boils down to resources and access, type of thing. All right. So I saw this tweet circulating on the internets, and this is a tweet by What, y'all? I'm struggling. It's a tweet by Chelsea Fagan, or Fagan. I'm not sure how to pronounce Chelsea's last name. Is Fagan, maybe Fagan. But anyway, Chelsea says, a lot of things that we think take a lot of courage actually just take a lot of money. Quitting your job with no backup, money. Calling off a wedding, money. Starting over in a new city, money. Accurate. It's very easy to have the courage of your convictions when you have a safety net, and very difficult to do anything on principle when you don't. Preach, Chelsea. All right. So absolutely accurate. I absolutely agree with that. There's an old expression, money can't buy happiness. It's bull. It's BS. All right. I'm trying to work on my use of profanity. Okay. But anyway, but it is some BS, because the reality is accessibility matters. And the more access to resources you have, the more comfortable your life can be. And the more comfortable you can be, then the less stress, the more happy. I mean, I'm just saying. So this idea that just step out on faith and just do it and just go for it. It sounds fantastic in theory, but in reality, the average person oftentimes cannot do that. We do have bills to pay, because we don't regular working class people often are not making a living wage. Folks are living check to check. And so it's difficult to basically just say, okay, forget that. I'm just going to step out and do what it is I really want to do with no type of security, with no type of safety net. It's not realistic. So there's a lot of kind of like inspiration rhetoric and things like that circulate, like, all you have to do is take a chance. And it sounds all frou-frou and pretty and beautiful, but it's not practical for the average person because folks got bills to pay. People have things to do. People can't really just drop their life or rearrange their whole lives to pursue something that they want to pursue. And if they had more money, they will have access to more resources and be able to pursue what it is they want to pursue. There was this tweet, and I'm pretty sure it was the Trudy. I think Trudy's Twitter handle is like the Trudes, like TheTrudz. And she said something to the effect of like the biggest like scam is this whole concept of a dream job. Like, oh, what's your dream job? Like, and she was just like, my dream would be not to have to work. But that's, the society we live in. It's like they ingrain that in us early on to dream of working, to dream of laboring. Just think about that. It's insane. It's really ridiculous when you think about it. So this whole idea that like, oh, well, just go for it sounds nice, but it's just not realistic. And we've been ingrained and indoctrinated to like labor, like we have to labor for everything. And that, if you just work a little harder, it'd be fine. And, the emphasis is not put on resources. So it can sound great like, oh, you just need to work a little harder and you'll have what you need. When the reality is, no, you need more resources, and that a lot of issues that you may have, you may not have to deal with if you have more money. If I had more money, a lot of things would be solved. Would I work? Probably not. Like ultimately for real is like, is it anybody's dream to actually work? Or we are just so indoctrinated to work and to labor in this society that, we are fed this construct of a dream job. And so we start dreaming of working as a child. We start dreaming of working, and it's so ridiculous. As opposed to, pursuing things that we just enjoy just because we enjoy it. We have to think about, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it can sound lofty and nice and like, oh, talking to the kids or whatever. But ultimately that's like, what kind of work you trying to do? Like, what kind of work are you trying to contribute to capitalism? And so just looking at it and looking at how that's something that starts from childhood is just crazy to me. It's really sad. But yeah, there's a lot that more money could solve. More access to things, more resources. And people who think otherwise or say otherwise, it's just because they have the privilege to do so. If you don't need more money, then good for you. But that's a privilege, and that's not the average person's reality. So yeah. I definitely agree that I think what it is things that, in terms of kind of stepping out on faith, people who are privileged and who have money can say that it takes courage. People who are broke can say that it takes money. What it takes is just is based on where you're coming from and where your starting point is or whatever. But to just say as a generalization, like, oh, well, money can't buy happiness. Money can't do this. Money can't do that. It's easy to say when you have it. When you don't have money, you are acutely aware of all the things money can do. Okay. And money can do a lot. So that's what our world runs on. All right. So another thing that I saw on social media. So there's been a lot of talk about Lizzo and fatphobia and just so many articles and pictures and stuff circulating around these internet streets. It's just been very crazy to see. And this whole concept of fatphobia, something I think about it a lot. I'm a fat Black woman, so I'm aware of how I take up space and how I move through spaces and how people receive me and interact with me and stuff like that. And so it's just a highly conspicuous way to exist in this world. Okay. So anyway, people have been talking stuff about Lizzo since Lizzo has increased in popularity. People continue to just say what they want to say. So Jillian Michaels was in an interview and she was asked about Lizzo. And first of all, of course, I'm just like sure in my mind this was like, of course, a setup, because of course we all know what Jillian Michaels. Now I won't say we all. For those who don't know who Jillian Michaels is or what she does, she is I guess you could say a trainer, but she has been responsible for. She's been a part of stuff like The Biggest Loser, so shows where folks are losing a ton of weight, like a whole lot of weight in a fairly short time frame, and so she very much, is a proponent of weight loss and stuff like that. So she was asked about Lizzo, and with me knowing Lizzo is a fat artist, that was a setup in the first place. But Jillian said, why are we celebrating her body? Why aren't we celebrating her music? Because it isn't going to be awesome if she gets diabetes. There's never been a moment where I'm like, and I'm so glad she's overweight. Okay. So I've seen there have been more conversations about like concern trolling and people policing fat people's health and, all this type of stuff in regards to their weight, in regards to the weight of fat people, whatever. And so it's just so interesting to me because these conversations, folks are like, oh, well, what about the health stuff where, people who are not fat can have plenty of health problems. That's not exclusive to fat people. And on the flip side of that, so outside of the people just doing the what I consider to be concern trolling, basically, what people are also doing is like in their attempt to, I guess, defend Lizzo, they're like, oh, well, Lizzo is on tour and she does this long of a set and she does all this physical stuff during her set and she plays the flute and they're really utilizing these things trying to basically say, oh, well, she still does all this stuff even though she's fat. But Lizzo should not have to earn the right to be fat. It shouldn't be like, oh, well, you're fat, but it's acceptable because you can do a concert. You're fat, but it's acceptable because you can play the flute, So, just like a lot of people comment and say things to her about, oh, you're so confident. I wish I had your confidence. And this is similar to what I was saying about in the situation with Tiana and the character Charlotte, where it's like, oh, well, the person who made that post on Facebook saying she deserves, props and all this kind of stuff because she was a friend to Tiana. And I'm just like, okay, so you just get props for, for being a friend. Is similar in terms of people are like, oh, well, Lizzo, you're not like other fat people. Like you get props because you can do all these things. And so people, they're like, oh, you're so confident. I wish I had your confidence. And the way they're looking at it is like, oh, you're confident in spite of being fat. And I wish I could be confident. You know what I'm saying? And so it's that kind of thing. It's really ridiculous to have that mindset, she can be confident and fat, not confident in spite of her fat, in spite of being fat. And that is how she is treated. And that's how people approach her as a pop culture person or as a topic, they're like, oh, she's so confident. I love her confidence. And honestly, it starts to sound like a dirty word because people say it so much, and what there's is loaded. When when it's like you're talking about confidence and you're referring to a fat person, especially a fat woman, especially a fat Black woman, like there's some things underneath that. It's loaded. You know, it's not just a face value statement. So that's a lot to it's a lot to that folks have to unpack around that, you know, of just being, oh, I love her confidence, right? She could be confident and fat, not confident in spite of her fat. Okay. So there's that. And for people who think they're mean, or people who mean well, but it's like some things that you're saying actually are just further perpetuating fat phobia. So like the confidence thing, oh, you know, she's so confident, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, if you're saying like in spite of her body or despite her body, she's still confident, it's dehumanizing. And that's what I meant by saying it was similar to the situation with, you know, the Princess and the Frog or whatever, with saying, oh, this character deserves props for being a friend. I'm like, so you're saying that Tiana's just so despicable that she, you know, that it's just amazing if you're able to be a friend to her. It's the same thing that you're saying if you're like, oh, well, you're so like, oh, well, despite being fat, you're so confident. Like, I just can't imagine how you can be confident and be fat. You know, that's what's ingrained underneath that. That's what's in the background of that. Okay. So that, you know, there's a lot of ingrained fat phobia. And it's something that we need to, we got to unpack. You know, it especially stood out to me because like I, you know, had been dealing with fat phobia or whatever, been dealing with it for a long time. And I was having a conversation with a friend and they said something that was, fat phobic. And I know in the moment they didn't, that wasn't their intention or whatever, but it was absolutely their impact. And because fat phobia is something that I know they have issues with, it just really rubbed me the wrong way. And it just reminded me of like how ingrained it is. And this was just around the same time as like the whole Jillian Michaels thing. So I was just like, geez, like, you know, fat folks cannot catch a break. That's just the way our society is. Our society is not designed to be accepting of fat people. So yeah. The other thing I want to mention is that just because you have friends or lovers or partners or whoever that are fat does not mean that your ass ain't fat phobic. Oh, I did not mean to curse, but it does not mean that you're not fat phobic. You could still be fat phobic. If you're treating these people like, oh, well, you're not like those fat people. You're the exception, or you wear yours well, or, you know, things like that. They all have some type of roots in fat phobia. And so we all have things to unpack. And that's also including fat people ourselves. Like we can spew and perpetuate fat phobia as well. It's very much ingrained. All right. So yeah, that is very much ingrained. Okay. So the last thing that popped up on social media that I wanted to mention. So this was another tweet, and y'all, I saw this tweet and I had like a visceral reaction. I was like, really? So this is a tweet. All right. Dog dander can give me an instant asthma attack. So yes, your service dog may be your buddy, but he may also be my health hazard. So then what? Can you point out what is wrong with that statement? So basically this is someone who has some type of, thing that they're afflicted with, asthma, and they're putting down someone who uses a service dog. It's so first of all, they said, you know, your service dog may be your buddy. That is literally that's contradictory. That's literally not what a service dog does. Like, service dogs are working dogs. So this is a resource for this person, and for you to minimize and be like, oh, that's your buddy, but you know, I got, you know, asthma. So you're basically creating this hierarchy, like, oh, what I got going on is worse than what you got going on, instead of being more empathetic and being like, oh, well, you know, I don't know. That's just a hot mess, honestly. Tell me, your service dog may be your buddy. There's so much disservice done in regards to disabled people. this particular tweet kind of created this whole like spiral, and people were talking about, access to rideshare services like Uber and Lyft. And drivers, this lady said that a driver saw that she was in a wheelchair and rode right past her. Someone else said that, the driver saw they had a service dog and drove right past them, things like that. So disabled folks already have like limited access to certain things or whatever. So let's say in the situation with a tweet, that person drives for like a rideshare service. Okay. You can choose like, okay, I can't have, dogs in my car because I'm allergic or whatever. Okay. Or I have a really bad reaction. Okay, great. You expressing that does not require you to put down someone else and be like, oh yeah, your service dog might be your buddy. Like, it's so unnecessary and it's so inaccurate and it's so disrespectful. I really think that folks just need to be more mindful and more educated on the things that they say before they say it. But I don't know, that might be wishful thinking. So yeah, it's there. They clearly created a hierarchy. Like, okay, well, my situation is worse than yours. Instead of being like, we both, have things we need to address. Let's address them together. Like, if I have the asthma situation, let me make sure I have. So what somebody suggested, I thought was a good suggestion, was that, oh, okay, you can't transport this person in your car because they have a dog and you have allergies. Then, if you could kind of just wait with them while they request another ride to just make sure that they get picked up. Okay, great. I think that's a great idea. You're not obligated to put yourself at risk. However, that doesn't mean you have to basically throw a disabled person under the bus because you feeling however you feeling. Like, the lack of mindfulness is just astounding. And some folks are just mean. I mean, sometimes the way stuff comes across, like, I'm just like, did you really think about this? Did you really think this through before you tweeted it? Because, okay, it's a hot mess. All right, y'all. I've said hot mess a few times this episode. But yeah, I appreciate you tuning in as usual. Thank you for doing that. And just a reminder that I am trying to step my game up in terms of my patrons. I want to try to get to, by the end of this season, 10 patrons, $50. Shout out to my current patrons. I sent y'all a little email just saying thank you because I appreciate you. And, there'll be, I'll be circling back to y'all to send y'all some other things, that are patron only. So yeah, I hope that, if you are so moved that you support the podcast via Patreon, and I appreciate any and all support that my listeners provide. Let's see. I think that is pretty much it. So thank you so much for tuning in to Black Radical Queer Podcast. I appreciate you listening. It means a lot to me. And until next time, I am out. Black Radical Queer is a ManeHustle Media podcast hosted by Jhavia Nicole. BRQ is produced and edited by Charmaine Fury, and the show's theme music was created by The Brothers Records. You can connect with us on Twitter or Instagram at Black Rad Queer. That's BLK RAD QWR. You can also connect with us on Facebook through the Black Radical Queer Podcast Facebook fan page or the BRQ discussion group. You can get Black Rad Queer merch on teespring.com/Black Rad Queer, BLK RAD QWR. And you can leave a voicemail, call in, ask a question, those types of things on the BRQ Google Voice line. And that number is 937-601-8647.
ManeHustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.